Hi, this is Iklak Sidhu, and welcome to Getting Started with DataX Projects. So as a quick review, this is the course model. Basically, in the first few weeks of this course, you're going to be working on what we'll call an insightful story that defines what your project is. We'll put a little bit more of that definition into the low-tech demonstration, which is all in slides that you're going to be making. That usually happens about the 5th or 6th week of the course. And from there, the rest of the course is about building the solution through a process of agile implementations. Okay, so in DataX, the projects are often proposed by advisors or by companies that are participating in the DataX lab, or they are proposed by students who are taking the course. Now, any of these are valid types of DataX projects. For example, you can propose a project that is something that a person or a consumer can use. You can propose something that a business can use. You can also have projects that provide social impact. And that basically means that it is helpful or something that is good for or helps people in society in general, or for people who are in need in some way. And then there's another category which I'll call it's just cool. And usually that means that it's something that gets people's attention, or it's something that's enjoyable in some way. And you'll have to come up with the for the argument for why it is in that category of just cool. Another thing to understand is that with DataX projects, you can create part of a project. For example, you could make a data pipeline, or you could make a crawler which goes and collects data from different places and stores them all into a certain type of table or data structure. And then one other thing to understand is that of whatever you build, it's also possible that you can turn in your project as a DataX library. And what that means is sometimes there's something that is used quite often, maybe by other people who do projects or by future students that would be doing projects. And so they don't have to write the code again and again. You could write it one time and do a very good job with it, and then they could just include your library function in their project, and it would always then be part of the DataX library. So these are the stages of what you can expect to happen. In the next few weeks, you're going to be proposing a project, and you'll be forming teams as you do it. There'll be a certain amount of brainstorming in the beginning, and then what I would call normalization, where you all have a common agreement about what it is that you're going to be making. At about this time, we're going to be asking you not only to make a low-tech demo, but also to use something called an innovation navigator to record what is the essence of your project. From there, you will create what is basically a minimal viable version of your project demonstration. And that means the very simplest possible version. It doesn't have to work in all respects. It may not be accurate. It might not have access to all the data, but just whatever is almost like the skeleton version of the project, you'll have to create that. And then on 1 to 2 week intervals, you're going to create some code and test it and be able to demonstrate that. And in about 4 iterations, you can do more than 4 iterations, but in about 4 iterations, your project will improve step by step. And by the end, you'll be able to do your final demonstration in this course. Okay, so to get started, you're going to need a concept and develop that concept into the story. So we're going to go through this process of figuring out what is your project concept, be able to write it in NABC form, which I'll explain in a minute. That will turn into your story and your low-tech demo, and then everything else, which is what you're actually going to build. Okay, So let me introduce you to one way that people think about concepts. This is called a high concept pitch, and it basically means you take something that already works in the world, like for example, the idea of a newspaper, and you combine it with something that might be a new trend or a new technology or something that's changed in the world. In this case, I'm going to say when the internet was becoming popular and newspapers were in print, the intersection of those two things is a concept. And you can see that actually turned into the company Yahoo, where they took the idea of a newspaper and combined it with the idea that it could be presented over the internet. And there you have a version of the company. So for data X, if you want to use this idea of what I sometimes call the A cross B model or this high concept pitch, what you can do is you can take just about anything that you know and combine it with the idea of what if you were to use it, that is reinvent or adapt it, but using a data and or AI type of system. Now, that's not the only way to get a story concept. What I explained to you just now, as I said, I call it A cross B, story generation. Another way that you can think about this is what is an ideal customer experience? Just think about something that you have used and you just wish it could be done more nicely, or that the experience wasn't perfect, and you can think of how that could be better. You can really solve just about any problem that you've seen. You can think about something that could be automated, and you can also think about predicting something that is important or predicting something of value. All of these are the beginning of a concept, which you can develop into a project for the class. So what you're going to do is you're going to start to work on scoping the concept for your project and eventually develop it into the full story and into the project itself. Now, you can start with any of the methods that we talked about already, the A cross B model, thinking about the customer experience or what would be an ideal experience, or automating, predicting, so forth, anything that can be done better. One way to improve or sharpen just about any story is to put it into what's called the NABC story outline model. That would be one sentence where you say, somebody has a need. This is the method or approach that you're going to use to fix it. You say, what would be the benefit to them if you actually did this? And then you would say one sentence about what are the other options or what are the other ways that this can be done. And now, as you sharpen your story, you should be able to provide a pitch, and you should be able to write down the NABC components into the Innovation Navigator. And we'll ask you to do that as you develop the story. Now, along those lines, it's a good idea, if you want your project to be a very good, quote, story, then these are two more ideas that you should be thinking about. One is, why is this a good area? What's happening in this area that it's important for this project to be done? You can also think about whether your team has the right skills background to understand it. And you can also think about, is there some sort of competition or target in terms of other projects or other things going on in the world? Now, it's not necessary that you have an amazing story and that it's a sharp business plan or anything like that. It can also be a very rough story, but in case you want to make your story very sharp, then these are the types of things that people generally do to get their story to be better and better, and therefore to get their project or even venture to be better and better. Okay, so this is what we're going to ask you to do on the Innovation Navigator. We'll ask you, what's your project name, to list the team members. We'll ask you to write down the NABC factors, need, approach, benefit, competition, so forth. And we'll ask you that same question: why is this a good space? who else is doing what in that space, for example. And then there's a second thing that we'll ask you to do. We're only going to ask you to fill this page once in about a month. But this is used to track the progress of your project. So one thing that you'll answer is, how will your project win? And what is going to make your project, very successful? And you would write something, maybe a sentence or two, that says, how is it that, what are you working on that makes your project really successful or better than other projects that could have been done? Like maybe ours is the one that's going to make something happen in the lowest cost, or make it the easiest way to do that type of function. We'll also ask you what is working and what is known. So you might say, oh, okay, at this point, our user interface works very well, or our data algorithm works very well. And we'll also have you separate what's working and not working, and answer the question, what is not working and what is not known. So maybe at that point in the project, you don't have the right data, or your accuracy is too low. But whatever the things, or maybe there's a tool that you don't know how to use, or some software that you don't know how to use, or that you don't know how to visualize something or graphically display it. Any of those things could be things that end up on the not working yet list. And like I said, we'll be asking you to do that approximately 3 times through the course of the entire project, and you'll use that to prioritize what it is that you need to do next to get to a successful end of project. Okay, so as a reminder, to get started, you need a project concept, and it's probably a good idea now to start coming up with as many project ideas as you can. All right, so with that, good luck. This is the end of the section on getting started with your project.